All right, quiz review. First one we're going to do is solve by completing the square. Now, obviously we're solving, but if I'm telling you to use a specific method, do you have to use that method? X squared plus 10x plus 8 equals 0. All right, solve by completing the square. Key words for completing the square, that's when we put our plus blanks in there. Do you guys remember that? Yes. The first thing I do is a plus blank or move the 8 over? Move the 8 over. So right now you're training your brain to process what the steps are when you do this on your own. You know what to do. All right, so I've lost my pencil. There it is. All right, x squared plus 10x,
plus blank.
And then we put our plus blanks. Good job. Negative 8 plus blanks. Why are there blanks on each side? Because there is a what?
You have to add whatever you add to that side.
Right, because there's an equal sign, an equation. What you add to one side, you must add to the other. All right, we should all know at this point how to fill in these blanks.
Oh, yeah.
What do we do?
Cut 10 in half.
Cut 10 in half. And so 5 squared is 25. Do we remember this? Yes. All right, then we double bubble here. And does anybody have what negative 8 plus? Okay, you remember it. Negative 8 plus 25 is what? It's negative 8. Be careful. 17. And then x into x. And we know it's plus, plus, or minus, minus because this is positive. The neighbor tells me what? They're both positive, and plus plus 5. X plus 5 quantity squared equals 17. What do I do to both sides? Square root. Why? Because we are solving. Square root, square root. You did have one like this on quiz 1, but I just told you earlier that this will also be on today's quiz as well. All right, undo. Am I? Sorry. All right, square roots and squares always undo each other, yes or no? Yes. Remember, we're on our own today, so heads up off the desk, phones put away, and you are taking notes with the rest of us. Now. All right, root 17 or plus or minus root 17? Plus, minus. And then what's the last step?
Move the 5 over.
Move the 5 over. And how do we write it?
X equals negative 5 plus or minus square root 17.
And that's it. That's your answer. All right. Questions? We're good? Okay. Number 2. Solve by using the quadratic formula. Oh. Solve by using the quadratic formula. All right, so this is the one where you need to know the quadratic formula. Let me write down the equation first. 2x squared plus 8 minus 15 equals 0. All right, so when you're taking the quiz, the first thing I would do is find an empty spot and write down this formula. I'm going to have you do the best you can from memory. Humming it in your head, saying it out in your head, and then writing it down. You do or don't?
I do.
Good. Does anybody remember it with the song? Yes.
I don't remember the name.
Okay, so what is it? Negative b plus or minus the square root of. I hear you guys humming at b squared minus. Perfect. All right. Are we good? All right, so remember before we plug things in, I first find my ABC. That was step 1. A, B, and C. Now I've had a few kids still asking, wait, how do you know we're ABC? A, B, C. What's A?
2.
B, C. All right. X equals opposite of B is what? Plus or minus the square root of, and this is where I put all the blanks, blank squared minus 4 blank blank over 2 blank. I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to fill your blanks in. Gentlemen, you guys are paying attention, right? Filling them in. Are we ready? Matt, can you give me what goes in the first blank? It's right here. B squared. So what goes in there? 8. And then for AC, what goes in the A and the C?
2.
All right. All over 2A would be 2 times 2. Good. All right. Let's continue. Negative 8 plus or minus the square root of, what's 8 squared? 64. Now, I'm going to wait to see plus or minus. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 15. Or you can do 2 times 15 is 30, and 30 times 4. Either way, what do we get? 120. And is it plus or minus? Okay, I heard both a plus and a minus. There's 2 negatives here, so what is plus? All over 2 times 2 is 4. And as tempting as it is, and I've set this on every single problem, I already hear the answer. No, no. Can I reduce? No, because what's here that I don't see? A 1. And can 4 or 2 go into 8, 1, and 4? No. All right, I do have to simplify, though. Negative 8 plus or minus the square root of, what's 64 plus 120? 184 all over 4. And before we say done, what do I have to do to the 184? Break it down?
Yeah,
Factor, the factor tree. I heard somebody say divide it by 4. Is that correct? So 184 divided by 4 is...
Where'd you get 120 from?
46.
Oh, the 4. I didn't.
The 4 times 2
Yeah,
times 15.
That's what I forgot to write down.
Okay. It's okay. 4 is 2 and 2. And 46 is what? 2 and 23. And is 23 breakdown, or is that it?
That's it.
All right, I have a 2, a 2, a 2, and a 23. What comes out? One set of
2s.
2's. So 2 root
46.
46. All right, so how do I write this? Negative 8 plus or minus.
Can we find another way for
To break it down, yes.
46?
2 root 46 all over 4. Now, I will tell you this. If you've done all this beautiful work and you've gotten this far and you stop, you would get it wrong.
We need to fix it.
Now can I reduce? Yes, because that coefficient that was once 1 is now a what?
2.
And what goes into 8, 2, and 4? 2. So we divide everything by 2. So what's negative 8 divided by 2? Plus or minus, what's 2 divided by 2? 2 divided by 2 is? Do you need to write the 1 root 46? Is it okay if you do? Yes. 4 divided by 2? 2. Do you have to write the 2? That you do. If you forget that one is wrong. All right. Questions on quadratic?
So just memorize the formula and we can solve
And
it.
know how to plug it in. And if you have the formula down and you plugged in and you make a small mistake, remember I do check work, so it's important for you to show your work.
When you have negative 8 plus or minus root 184 and you can't, there's a number that you can't factor it out.
Good question.
Just leave it.
Yes. So she's saying if you had something like this, negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 23, thank you, all over 4 or 2 or 6. Can you reduce this? No, this would be it. You would be done. Or let's say you pulled a number out and that number was 3. Can you reduce this? No. Yes.
What if it was like like for the original problem, like root negative 184.
Okay, good. I was just going to go over one of those next. Okay, so what we have, negative 8 plus or minus the square root of negative 184, all over, was it 4? Okay, she said, what if it happens like this? And I'm glad she asked, because I did want to talk about the I. Do you guys agree when there's a square root of a negative, an I comes out? Okay, we already broke down 184. That was 2 root 46. Yes or no?
It wouldn't end in 2i.
Yes. Good job. He said, wouldn't it be 2i root, was it 46? Okay, so do you see how it's not a whole lot different, but there is a slight difference right there? Can you guys see that? Negative 8 stays negative 8, 4 stays 4, but 2 root 46 became what? And why is it 2i? Because the square root of a negative comes out as an I. And you would still be able to reduce. You would still be able to divide everything by 2. And you'd get negative 4 plus or minus I root 46 over 2. So final answer, what's the only difference? Instead of 1, I would have an I, or 1i. Got it? No, this one's not the answer. Her question is, what if it was negative? And you do need to know that. So I'm glad she asked, because you do need to know how to take on a negative using I. The plus or minus would still be there. It would just be I root 46. But everything else would stay the same.
Do you use A twice?
Yes, you use it A and B and B. C is only used once.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking? All right. Questions on the solving piece? No questions? All right. And just a quick reminder that everything I'm going over right now will not only be on the quiz today, but on the what next week? The test. All right. Find, number 3, find the vertex by completing the square. Find the vertex by completing the square. Would it help if I told you guys where each one of these, what objective each one of these are, or just continue going?
No.
Continue going. All right. Find the vertex by completing the square. And this is review. We did this last week. I believe it was last block. Oh, excuse me. All right. G of x equals x squared minus 12x minus 8. Okay, what's the key word here? What method are we using? Vertex is a key word, but what method? Completing the square. And completing the square means we put plus what on each side? Plus blank. All right, plus blank on each side. All right, yes?
Can I use y instead of j?
Yes, you can. He said, can we change this to y? Most definitely. Well, does anybody want me to do that when I do my work, or leave it? It doesn't matter. You are correct. Okay, really quick, plus blank because it says complete the square. Also, does it say solve anywhere?
No.
And if I'm not solving, I'm not doing what to both sides that I did on this problem? I'm not square rooting both sides. You do have to remember that. All right, what's the first step? Do you guys remember that? We've been doing it on all the others. Move the 8 over. And at this point, if you wanted to change it to y, you would. I'm going to leave it since you guys said it didn't matter. X squared minus 12x. Now, what do I put on each side that I gave as a little reminder that I will not give as a reminder on the quiz or test? Plus blank. And we've already reviewed how to do that. You take the middle number, cut it in half, and what? Square it? Square it? All right, so negative 6 squared is what? 36 on each side. g of x plus, what's 8 plus 36? 44 equals, and then you double bubble up here. And what have I told you? Can you skip the double bubble step and go straight to factoring?
Yeah.
If you want to, yes. I always write it just because. Plus plus or minus minus?
Minus.
The neighbor tells you. Do you agree? And minus minus what? 6. And so it's x minus 6 quantity squared. As tempting as it is to square root both sides, is that what I do? No, because we are not solving. I want to find the vertex. What do I do? Subtract the 44 over. G of x equals x minus 6 quantity squared minus 44. This is not the final answer because it asked for the vertex. So if this was the quiz and you had an answer over here, an answer blank, and this was number 3, what would you put as your vertex? Good job. 6. Go ahead. All right. So why is it positive 6? Because it's, what have I been telling you guys? Opposite of the inside. Outside stays the same. Bless you. All right. Questions on that? Yes. No question? Just what? Okay. All right. Number 4. Find the vertex using the axis of symmetry formula. Those of you that are juniors that have come back already from the testing, I went over this yesterday, so you can take a look and see if you know how to do this, if you looked at the video notes or not. Okay, or not yesterday, day before for you guys. All right. F of x equals x squared minus 10x minus 26. All right. This is asking for the same thing as number 3, and that's to find the what? Vertex. But it's asking us to use a different method. What method? Axis of symmetry formula. So do you need to remember the axis of symmetry formula? It started with x equals opposite of something, opposite of b over 2a. Is that another thing you should write on your quiz when you get it?
Yes.
And label them. You would write this and label this as quadratic formula. You would label this and write this and label it as axis of symmetry formula. All right. What do we do? You're taking the quiz, you get to this problem, what do you do?
Or label.
Label. We wrote the formula down. We label A, B, and C. What is A? 1. What is B? And what is C? And technically in the formula, do I use the C?
No.
No. So if you don't write the C and you just write A, B, that's perfectly fine. All right. X equals opposite of B. B is negative 10. What's the opposite of negative 10? Over 2a, so 2 times what? 1. So 10 over 2 equals? 5. X equals 5. Who remembers what I do? Don't blurt it out. Just raise your hand if you remember the next step. I have 2 kids in the whole class, 3, and one of them wasn't even here on this block day. 4 of you guys. Okay, this is on the quiz. I want you to dig deep in your head. What do we do next? I'll give you a hint. It's something with this. Okay, I heard more O's. Okay, what do we do?
Plug it in.
Plug it in. And this I changed to y because I know it confuses people. Like, what do I do with that x? Just change the whole thing to y. Blank squared minus 10 blank minus 26. And you are allowed to use calculators. What do I plug in here? 5 and 5. And what's 5 squared? Minus 50 minus 26. I'll let you guys finish that off. y equals, what's 25 minus 50? Negative 25 minus 26. I've had a few kids say I'm still struggling here. You can plug it in your calculator, or when you learned this in middle school, you said change the last two signs or add the opposite. Add the opposite. So what is it?
1.
Negative. Negative 51, and it's negative because you're adding. All right, so when they have a blank over here, number 4 blank, what are you going to put as your vertex?
Negative 51.
All right, questions? Are we good?
Yeah.
All right, you will have some where it says solve using any method. I do want to go over which method is nice to use when. Solve using, I know, any method. All right, solve, yes. Hustle, please. Solve using any method. What was one of the methods I said you guys would have? Starts with an F. Factor. Or you could complete
The square.
the square. Or you could use quadratic. Now, not all problems are factorable. So that one doesn't always work, but it's the easiest. At least I feel like it's the easiest, so I try that first. If it's not factorable, I try to complete the square. If I can't complete the square, or it's too hard to complete the square, bless you, I use quadratic formula. Some kids will say, well, I'm just going to use this one every single time because it works, and it does. Quadratic formula works on every single quadratic equation. But if you're trying to save time, what should you try to do first? Factor. And if it doesn't factor, complete the square, and then quadratic. So let's just talk about which one is easier. Number 1, if I give you something like this, 0 equals x squared plus 5x plus 6. If you struggle with factoring still at this point, then I would go straight to quadratic. Next door, Ahmad. They're testing, so you need to hustle over. Same room as last time. You were over there already? So you went straight there instead of coming here. Okay. Wait, did you go in there today?
No.
Okay, if you finished it last time, there's a new one today.
That's tough.
All right. So, anyone? Does this factor? Those of you that are pretty good with factoring at this point, is there anything that multiplies to positive 6 that adds up to positive 5?
Yes.
2 and 3.
X plus 2, x plus 3, and then you set them each equal to what? 0. Do you agree that is super easy? You subtract, subtract, and what are your two solutions? -2 and -3. No parentheses because it's not an ordered pair. All right. Now, if you wanted to use quadratic formula. Yes. Is it going to take a lot longer? Yes. How many of you can skip that step right there? You factor and go straight to your answer. So you would go even faster than I did. All right. What if I gave you something like this? 0 equals x squared plus 6x plus 2. What's the first thing you try to do? Factor. Does this factor? Is there anything that multiplies? No. So if it does not factor, what are your only other two choices? Complete the square or quadratic formula. Now, complete the square only works really nicely when two things happen. The leading coefficient is 1, and the middle number is what if you want to cut it in half? Not a perfect square, but it is even. Is it a 1? And is it even? So if I was doing this, what method would I choose? Complete the square. I've already reviewed complete the square with you, so I'm not going to do it again. But I just want to go over which method to use when he comes back.
The quadratic is the
X
equals
yes.
negative p plus minus.
Yep. All right.
I got it memorized.
Good. 0 equals x squared plus 7x plus or minus 4. All right. Does this factor? Does anything multiply
Yeah, I don't know.
to negative 4 that adds up to positive 7?
No.
All right. So we can't factor. So that leaves complete the square or quadratic. What I want to use complete the square in this one. And I can tell some of you guys are not paying attention. You're only hurting yourself. Why would I not want to complete the square?
Because 7 is odd.
Because it's odd. When you cut in half and squared, it does not work out nicely. It's doable. We can do it, but it's not nice. All right, last one. I'm going to show you. Number 4. 0 equals 3x squared plus 8x minus 2.
And this is going to be basically like how all the questions are on the quiz.
There's some that say solve using any method. That's
Any method, and that's what we're doing right now.
Yes.
But there's some that say
specifically like I did on this page.
But
Complete
that's all
the
that's going to be
square.
on the quiz, right? Just
Everything
those
I'm
three.
going over with you right now.
Oh, okay.
All right. So right here, it doesn't factor. I can tell you right now that it doesn't factor. So if it doesn't factor, what other 2 methods do we have?
Complete the square.
Complete the square or quadratic formula. All right. Now this is even, but why would I still not complete the square?
Because x squared has 3.
This has to be a 1 in order for it to work out nicely. Again, it's doable, but I definitely would not suggest it. So what would I use on this one?
The quadratic.
Quadratic. Quadratic here, quadratic, complete the square there, and factor here. Now, if you're there and you're like, I can't remember what she said, could you use a quadratic on every single one? And it's going to work.
So which one would we do for 4?
For 4, quadratic. Again, if you're sitting there like I can't remember which one to use, then use quadratic. If you're stuck, it's going to take longer, but quadratic will work on every single one of these. Questions? Do you want me to review which one to choose when? This problem here. Okay. So, when it uses the word minimum or maximum, what's the key word? Vertex. Which one of these is vertex form? That is B. Do you see that? All right. When it says the zeros, the x-intercepts, what's the key word when it asks for the x-intercepts or zeros? Factored form. Which one of these is double bubble factored form? All right. And then here reveals the y-intercept. I didn't write it on this one, but I did it on a different one. That's standard form. Or the only one left. Which one is standard form? That's ax squared plus bx plus c.
Just stick to quiz.
We are. That's the first one. Do you see that? We're done? We're good.